So I want to share with you my first real experience with extreme prejudices and sexism towards myself as a man, just for simply being a male. Now, I'm not sharing this story to, play the sympathy card or, to play the victim. I understand as a man that, life's supposed to be hard and, life's not fair. So I'm just sharing this story just simply for awareness. And after the story, I'll share my thoughts about the whole situation at the end of the story. So this was, I'm a single father. I have a beautiful 7.5-year-old daughter. And a couple of years ago, I forget exactly, I think my daughter was maybe 3 at the time, around that age, give or take a year, 3-ish or something. But we were at a festival. I live in downtown Dunedin, and there's festivals here all the time. And we were at a festival downtown. I forget what festival it was. Dunedin. Anyone that knows Dunedin knows there's festivals here just about every weekend. So I don't know if it was, an art festival or jazz festival or something like that. But, we walk down a lot of times and go check out the festivals. And so we went down and, at the time, like I said, she was about 3 or 4. And we were, she had some of her little toys with her. And actually, I remember we had some chalk. And so we were sitting down on this sidewalk by a restaurant. In the front of this restaurant we had just eaten at, all in the streets were all blocked off, and there was vendors and things going on for the festival. And so we were just off on this sidewalk, just playing, drawing with chalk and playing with her little toys and things like that, having a good time. And I don't remember exactly what happened, but my daughter started to act bratty. At the time she was like 3-ish years old. So, kids that age are going to try to test the parent, and try to see if, how much they can walk all over them. And so she started to act up and not listen and, disobey. I can't remember what it was about. It's been years now, but I just remember that, she was disobeying me and she was acting up. And so it was time to go. And so I said, okay, that's it, time to go home. Because, when she acts like that, she knows now that not to do that because, then the fun's over. No matter where we're at, time to leave if you're going to disobey me and act up like that, especially out in public. And so, so she started acting up and, okay, all right, time to go. And at the time she was 3-ish, so she started, screaming, crying, no, I don't want to go, I don't want to leave. And she started screaming, crying, so I had to pick her up. Okay, so I pick her up, put her over my shoulder. Okay, we're going home. If you're going to sit there and scream and not hold my hand and walk home, then I'm going to have to pick you up and take you home. And so I, picked her up, didn't hit her, nothing like that, just picked her up, simply put her on my shoulder, and she's screaming, crying, like a typical 3-ish, 4-year-old kid throwing a temper tantrum. And so screaming, I think she was 2 or 3, I can't remember, somewhere between the age of 2 and 4 years old. And so she's screaming, crying, and I'm, I'm just walking her home, and all of a sudden, I see this lady, staring at me, and I forget, like 10 yards away or something like that, staring at me, and all of a sudden she's looking at me, she's like, excuse me, why is she crying? And she walks up, and I'm like, she's just throwing a temper tantrum, kids. And like thinking, like, what does this lady even want? And so, why is she crying? Why is she crying? And I'm like, she's just throwing a temper tantrum, And so then my daughter was still crying and everything. So I'm like, so I just start walking on, carrying on. And I wasn't really in the mood to talk to some stranger while my daughter's throwing a temper tantrum. And so I continue walking, and all of a sudden she says, excuse me. I'm like, what does this lady want? So she comes up and she puts her hand on my daughter's back and rubbing her, and she's like, is this your daddy? And I'm like, you gotta be fucking kidding me. And is this your daddy? And my daughter was like 3 at the time. She was temper tantrum, so she didn't really say anything. She just, and I'm just like, are you kidding me? And so I said, of course this is my daughter. So then I start walking away, and just like, at this point I was, starting to get angry. So I just started walking away, and all of a sudden, again, she screamed, like, excuse me. And she comes up, and she's like, I asked a question. She's like, she's talking to the girl. She's like, is this your daddy? And I'm like, are you kidding me, lady? Get out of here. Like, of course this is my daughter. And so I start walking away, and she screams across, where everybody can hear, is that your daddy? Is that your daughter? How do I know that that's your kid? And at this point, everybody starts staring at me, looking at me. We're at this festival and everybody's staring at me as if I'm sort of like, as if I'm some kind of like child molester or kidnapper or something. This lady's screaming at me, from 10 yards away now. How do I know that's your daughter? I asked her, are you her daddy? And she didn't answer me. And I'm like getting so mad. And, everybody's staring at me now like I'm the bad guy. And so I just look at it. At this point, I'm losing it. I'm just like, and I just said lady, shut the fuck up. Get away from me. You don't even know me. Of course, this is my daughter. How dare you even question me? This is my daughter. And I said, call the police if you want. I said, get the hell away from me and my daughter. And so then I was so mad. I felt like I was like, I got to get out of here before I freaking slap this lady in the face. And so I just kept walking off. And fortunately, that was the end of it. Because I was like, great, if this lady calls the police, obviously this is my daughter. But, if she calls the police, then I'm going to have to deal with that whole scenario. So, fortunately, that was the end of it. I think she just saw how mad I was. And, I guess she just saw that the look in my eyes, like, yeah, this is my daughter. You've crossed the line here. In accusing me. And so the thing that really was like surprising to me, I'm like, wow, the only reason why she questioned me that, and it's because I'm simply a male. I mean, how many times do you see moms in the grocery store or at the mall or at the park with their kids that are screaming, crying, acting like brats, throwing temper tantrums, but nobody would ever think to go up to them and be like, are these really your children? How do we know that these are your children? And question a mom that has crying children. No one would ever do that. But just simply because I'm a man, because I'm a single dad, that means that I'm a target, and that in her eyes, she was trying to be the hero, that most likely I probably kidnapped this kid, and that's why the kid is crying and screaming. It's not because this is my daughter and I'm just a single dad, and God forbid, there are good dads out there and that take care of their kids. Anybody that knows me knows that I'm extremely involved in my daughter's life, and our relationship is like that. Me and my daughter, we have an awesome connection. I've never hired a babysitter once for my daughter. She's a big reason why I have successful businesses, so that I can be there for her and being the best role model for her. So, what this really, the reason why I'm sharing this is because the mainstream media hates men, and I think that a lot of men are waking up to this, that it's no surprise, and the mainstream media hates men, and they've conditioned society to look at men as like public enemy number one. I mean, there used to be a time when men were very respected, and men's advice was, were the elders, and were respected as the leader of their tribes, of their community, and we respected their wisdom. But now it's all about, men need to control their toxic masculinity. And, and if even from a young age, if boys are trying to be themselves, then, they're riddled on medication, and they're basically vilified and until they submit into just being a docile little submissive beta male. And, and just compliant with how the system is. And a lot of men aren't even aware of this. The majority of men are not even aware of what is going on. They've just been so conditioned from such a young age that they don't recognize any of this. Fortunately, more and more men are becoming aware of, what is going on. I mean, there's not even allowed to be men's groups anymore. I mean, even the Boy Scouts, any place that there's a men's group immediately gets, infiltrated, and it has to be inclusive for everybody. Fortunately, for right now, there's the internet, YouTube, and forums, where men can share their express stories and feelings and wisdom to other men. Who knows how long that'll be even allowed. I know that the censorship is cracking down like crazy, and anybody that even talks about these types of subjects gets labeled as hate speech, and their YouTube channels gets demonetized, or worse, even completely taken down. I've seen and heard of that happening a lot. I worry about that even with my own channel. Right now it's pretty small, but as it grows, who knows? Just because doing a video like this, maybe get labeled as hate speech, and next thing you know, demonetize my whole platform. So, that's the world that we live in. Unfortunately, it wasn't always like that, but life moves in cycles. And right now, at the stage that we're in, men are public enemy number one, and the media, likes to just blow that up so that, it's, people like that woman who basically was accusing me of being a kidnapper or sexual predator or whatever. They're buying into the media and all this stuff about how the media paints this picture of men being the bad guys. And, it's kind of a shame. I think eventually the tides will turn. Everything moves in cycles, so eventually things will change. What happens is that, during hard times, shit hit the fan and society collapsed, guess what? Then all of a sudden, it would be men who would rebuild everything. And strong men, who rose to leadership positions and helped rebuild everything. Then all of a sudden they'd be, all this, feminism and equality bullshit would go out the window, and all of a sudden men would be respected again. Their advice would be taken seriously as they helped to rebuild the society. But what happens, as the society grows and gets to, a comfortable, good place, then all of a sudden all these little silly type of ideologies happen where it cycles, where men are the bad guy again, and we got to embrace equality, and men da, 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 da. And so it's always going to be moving in cycles. And then when society collapses again, guess what? Men are going to have to rebuild it again. So history repeats itself. Life always moves in cycles. Like I said, I'm not sharing this story for sympathy or to play the victim card or anything like that. Just simply awareness. That's what, in my channel here, I share, business advice, but also advice for men, advice to help wake up. To wake up to the reality of the world that we're living in, and to be aware of what's going on. Because, if you're living in ignorance, then you're never truly going to be free. Freedom is being aware and having knowledge of what is going on, understanding the matrix in which we've been born into. And break free from that prison of your mind that we've been conditioned and born into. So, if you guys have any stories, or comments on this situation, please, I love comments. Put your comments below, subscribe to the channel, hit that like button, share, and until next time, have a great day, a great week, a great month, a great year. Let's make it a great life. See ya.